So with all of our Catholic community networks, what we always do is open up our session with a prayer of gratitude. So if you'll just join me for a moment of prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to come together as professionals. We just pray for the health. We pray for the success of all the organizations and the people who are represented today. We just ask you to help us keep our gaze upon you in all that we do, personally and professionally. In particular, we give thanks for newborns. We give thanks for young parents preparing for the birth of a child. We give thanks for students and for educators and administrators and the gift of Catholic education. And we give thanks for the messengers of mercy who help those in need, often the most basic forms such as food and drink and clothing, shelter and healthcare. We just ask that you help us to stay mission focused and to do all things to honor and glorify you as we build up the kingdom of God on earth as joyful disciples. And we ask this in your name, we pray, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So today we're talking with several very strong Catholic leaders who blaze trails in their career. In their current roles, they've all done a tremendous impact in our community as professionals who turn the impossible into the possible. So our speakers today will share their knowledge and their insights and things they've done to remain mission focused despite of all external obstacles, particularly the all-consuming pandemic. In speaking with some of our speakers today and others about this panel, I described it a little bit like the Grammy Awards. During the Grammys, artists that you know and may have heard individually perform and love often are paired together with other individuals. So like on the Grammy Awards, it might be Taylor Swift and Stevie Nicks, might be Sarah Bareilles and Carole King. And one of my all-time favorites was Lady Gaga and Elton John. And their combined performance together was not only a special treat, but a very memorable moment. And that's what we intend to happen this morning, where our well-regarded professionals who've not shared a stage like this before have an opportunity to do so with you. So very briefly, I just want to recognize that many of you may know about the Catholic Foundation from the grants that we make to organizations, both Catholic and non-Catholic, and locally and abroad. But we do so much more. Here at the Catholic Foundation, we're led by our President CEO, Matt Kramer, and our Vice President of Development, Cheryl Eunice Mansour, and a very talented team of individuals who do their very best to help people of all ages and sizes and backgrounds with their charitable giving. We work with our donors to feed the hungry. They endow worthy efforts. They enhance children's education. They help the elderly, and they renovate schools and churches and work with nonprofits of all sizes. So we're very easy to use. As a community foundation that's lay-based, we provide that expertise to make sure that what other assets are given by our donors are maximized to achieve those donors' charitable objectives. So simply put, we help donors achieve their charitable legacies. And if we can help in any way, shape, or form in that regard, and also if you are a nonprofit organization in search of a grant, if you have interest in that, please let us know and we'd be glad to work with you. So let me now introduce our speakers. So boldly leading off today is Geralyn Kaminsky. She's the Executive Director of the Catholic Pro-Life Community, which serves the Respect Life Ministry of the Diocese of Dallas. She's a proven business leader and entrepreneur with more than 25 years of strategic planning and marketing and business development expertise. And she's worked in both the nonprofit and the profit sector. You'll see that as a theme throughout today. She founded Friends of los Niños, a nonprofit organization that helps needy children in Honduras. And she also established a group called Soul Sisters Creations. It's a handcrafted jewelry entity as a tool to promote conversations about faith. And she served in an array of church ministries. Her background makes her the ideal person to be leading CPLC at this moment in time. So Geralyn, let me turn things over to you.
Thank you, Bill. And it is just an honor to be here with the Catholic Foundation and with my fellow band members, Michael and Jane. Back to your Grammy Award analogy. I'm pleased to be here, and especially on today's day, you know, our Mother Mary's birthday. Our Lady of Guadalupe is the patroness of the unborn. And in this year of St. Joseph, the protector of the unborn, it is just a thrill to be here. What I want to do initially is share a screen with you to tell you a little bit about who we are as an organization. And I'm hoping that everyone can see that. Bill, is that fine with you?
That looks just great.
Okay, great. All right. Well, you can look at, this is our 25 years of life-saving ministries, and we will be approaching our 30 years in just a couple of years. So we will move on to an addendum on this sheet, but I wanted to share this now with you and talk a little bit about how we were founded. We were founded in prayer. And as Bill said, we are the Respect Life Ministry for the Dallas Diocese, founded in 1990 to 1993 as the Bishop's Pro-Life Steering Committee. And again, started in prayer. We quickly went into serving community. You'll notice that we engaged the community with the Rome Memorial Mass. We went into Project Gabriel, which helps mentor moms who are choosing life. But quickly noticed that we had to educate. We had to educate the world. The messages were going out there. Lots of talk about abortion and other non-life-saving topics. And quickly from that point, when I say quickly, a couple of years into it, we established sidewalk counseling to help women at abortion clinics so that they could understand there are other options. So a big part of what we do is to serve, educate, and engage. We are autonomous from the diocese. However, we work very closely with a lot of diocesan ministries and departments, and of course, Bishop Burns himself. Let me go on and tell you about how we stay focused on our organizational mission. First of all, the CPLC, that's our acronym CPLC, Catholic Pro-Life Community, performs a core values review every 3 years just to be clear on our focus and refine our mission. The largest risk to an organization is not that they're doing too little, but actually doing too much. We talk about that a lot in project managers, scope creep. Well, mission creep can happen as well. So we defined our mission, and it's the mission is to educate, unite, and mobilize Catholics and people of goodwill to end abortion and restore respect and legal protection for every human life from conception until natural death. So what we've done is we defined core areas of focus with that. In here, you will see that with our ministries that are pictured. What's a core area for us? It's a frontline presence at the abortion center. It's pro-life education to students in our Catholic schools, to families, to church members, to different organizations throughout the diocese. And we support pregnant moms. We support post-abortive parents, men, women, and families who have suffered through the pain of abortion in some way. We'll also share our pro-life model with other organizations outside of the area to help them conduct life-saving ministries. So again, we've got our mission, and then we always relate back to our core values. What I'm going to do now is stop. Let's see, I can leave that. I guess I could leave that on there for you if you'd like to see it for just another moment. So what we do is we define who we are, but we most importantly define who we're not. And we have I'm going to share some examples. I think it's good to have tangible examples. For instance, our Project Gabriel ministry pairs moms to be who have chosen life with mentors. And at one time, we help with financial classes, parenting classes, certainly resources that they need. At one time, we thought we should extend our services into counseling and mental health, but we went right back to our focus areas, to our core values, and decided, no, that's not part of our mission, because there are wonderful experts in the area that can better do that. So we partner, and that's a good part of looking at a mission, to know what you can do well and what you can't. We also defined operational tenets. which again points us back to our mission when we're making strategic decisions. So our operational tenets show us how we can be consistent across our organization. It helps us ensure a legacy of excellence. So who we are operationally, our tenets, we're Christian-centered and we're Catholic grounded. We are missionary, we are compassionate, we are volunteer-powered, among others. So whenever a strategic decision needs to be made, we will go ahead and run them through these aspects. And then, of course, we define our operational priorities so that we can take care of the most important thing first. We build upon our past successes. We've had past successes for over 25 years. And for instance, our sidewalk counseling is critical to saving lives, and it's critical to saving the lives of the babies and the mothers, because we know what happens to mothers after they have an abortion. So it's an absolute requirement for knowing what we say, how we say it, how we introduce options. And then we always have to be looking to build upon that success. Is there technology that might help us? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little while. I want to talk about enhancing your organization's community impact. And again, that is staying focused on the mission. We mobilize people of all faiths, of all cultures, and educate and advance the pro-life message. A good example of how we do this and where we do this is the Rome Memorial Mass and the March. And by the way, you can mark your calendars, that's January 15th next year. But what we do is support the moms in need, support the families in need, and mobilize the community to have a big impact. What I think I'm going to do now is stop sharing. Here we go. You'll notice that we have created a positive brand and identity. We did a complete brand rebuild a few years ago to better help us connect as a community. And there is a name change. We were known as the Catholic Pro-Life Committee, and that served us very well for many years. But what we want to do is migrate from a committee, which limits members from participating fully in a sense, to a community, and that change transformed our organization from a standalone pro-life organization to more of a grassroots community-based collection of individuals. We chose colors, we chose taglines, we looked at our saints. Saint Teresa of Calcutta and said that God created us to love and to be loved. So for us, it's very important that we keep those words front and center. We don't know who might see them, a person in need, a volunteer, a donor, one of our fine partnering organizations like St. Vincent de Paul, the Catholic Foundation. So we are created to love, committed to life. We ran those all back through our tenets. We ran those back through our mission statement and our core values, and it works. We replaced limited use imagery with custom branding. It's a logo that tells a story in many ways. And perhaps on another panel discussion, we can talk about that. Something very important, though, about staying focused on our mission is growing relationships with influential leaders. And these influential leaders are our partnering groups. Planned Parenthood, for instance, is a behemoth and large, lots of money, and they work their mission. When you look at pro-life organizations, we are functionally smaller, we have more limited funds, and so forth. But when we come together as pro-life ministries together, and I'm talking about our pregnancy resource centers, I'm talking about our maternity homes, I'm talking about our pro-life physicians. When we come together, we are large and we are bold. And we are a force to be reckoned with when it comes to life. Also, influential leaders will help us with our brand identity out in the community to increase awareness. We work specifically as the Respect Life Ministry of the Dallas Diocese. We work specifically with parish coordinators in each and every one of our 77 parishes in the diocese. So those parish coordinators are very important to us, and they are volunteers, highly influential in their church with their pastor and with other ministries. Remember I said about having a grassroots community so that we can go broad and across? Very important. We arm them with the mission, arm them with the message, and solidifies the pro-life landscape with everything we do. One thing I wanted to add just about building relationships is something we focus on, and building relationships is key, because what happened in the pandemic is that there were needs, but we had relationships built. So we were able to work with our partnering organizations and our volunteers and our donors to supply the diapers, to give the extra cash, to mentor over Zoom and things like that. So building relationships is key for our mission going forward, because it will help sustain the organization in the good times and in the bad. We creatively solve business problems. And speaking of the pandemic, we all had to do that over the past year and a half, but we had to stay focused on the mission. This is where you could really get some mission creep, because things are not done the way that they have been done. So go back to the sidewalk. Moms could not go into the abortion clinics because of COVID. So they had to wait in their car to be called for their appointment. But our sidewalk counselors stayed on the sidewalk, masked, 6 feet apart or more, and armed with a cell phone. We introduced dedicated cell phones with signage so those moms could see that there were other options. And when they called, they could pick up the phone. The sidewalk counselor was picking up the phone right there. So that was a pretty creative way to solve a problem. We also introduced geofencing ad placement strategy that drove a notification ad within a certain number of feet of an abortion center. So even if a person was driving or sitting in the abortion center, they could see that there was an option right outside. Again, we had to stay focused on our mission. We had educate and unite to end abortion. And so that's what we did in those couple circumstances. And another creative way, I'm going to go back to building on past successes. We know what works for our event fundraising, but a pandemic happened and we had about 3 weeks to pivot and create an alternative event last March. And we did. We were the first pro-life organization to initiate a virtual alternative to the primary funding events. We did that with 2 out of 3 of our fundraising events last year. So we changed from a large in-person event and we did a live stream. So now here we are in this pandemic so many years or so many months later, and it's not uncommon for us to be Zooming with each other and screen sharing and live streaming and all of that. But back then, that was a challenge. So again, we went back to our mission. What's our mission? Our mission is to educate and unite and mobilize Catholics and people of goodwill. For us to do that, the donations are critical. We cannot do that without the support of the pro-life community and the good people in it. I wanted to share another story about changing due to a pandemic. We have healing retreats called Rachel's Vineyard and Project Joseph retreats for people who have been impacted by the pain of abortion. Those are in-person retreats, couple days long, but because of the pandemic, they all but stopped. But we went back to our mission, and it was to unite people. And so what we did is started a virtual group event and even encompassed personal one-on-one telephone counselor support with trained counselors with grief and trauma. And we were able to continue healing those people in need. And so again, back to our basics. We knew we had successful retreats in the past, and now we had to do something different. And I want to finalize with measuring an organization's success. How do we do that? Well, really, we have to start with the end in mind. How do we want to measure? What metrics, what stats are important? We go back to our mission, staying focused on the mission. It's saving lives. So we'll measure things like confirmed saves. How many babies were saved on the sidewalk? We will measure turnaways where women were pretty sure they were going to stay, keep their child and parent, but maybe lost touch with us. But we count those turnaways because we were able to provide them options. We have metrics for education, who we speak with, whether at our pro-life boot camp or at our event just last weekend, our Bella Vida, where tough topics were discussed, but 111 people came with COVID protocols to hear education from Father Richard Samor on pro-life topics. So we will also keep metrics on attendees, audience sizes, our participants in our healing ministries. And we just had an event, a meeting with our ministry leaders. And I want to just end by saying this. We operate with a lot of volunteers. They are fabulous. We started with volunteers. We have 35 part-time and full-time staff members. And I did an exercise the other day and I interviewed them, and we have collectively 409 years of pro-life ministry within our organization. And that does not count our volunteers. So when we need to know something, we go back to this team of experts here in the office with our mission statement. And we had a mission forward team meeting 2 weeks ago to do exactly that. Our mission, our core tenets, our operational principles, what's next? As you all know, the landscape for abortion is changing. And we are already operating with some increased numbers of volunteers, increased numbers of ministry participants to be able to support the moms in need now. So I hope that gives you an overview of how we are focused on our organizational mission. And I again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Geralyn. That's a wonderful summary that you provided, and be thinking about questions that you might have for Geralyn in just a little bit, okay? Like the Grammys, we throw in some surprises. So our next speaker is Jane Koenecke, the Executive Director at the Halo Institute. The Halo Institute works very, very closely with the Catholic school system here, that's headed up by our actual next speaker, who is a superintendent of schools, Dr. Matt Vereecke. Dr. Vereecke?
Well, thanks. And it's great to be with you here all today. We really thought, like your Grammy analogy, it would be great to bring the Catholic school system along with the Halo initiative, because ultimately this group is one that is ultimately allowing us to do our mission and ultimately enhancing the things that we do. I came to the diocese in January of 2016. And I think at the time, the problems with the Catholic school system were well known. We had a number of things that we were trying to solve and a number of areas that we were trying to reach into. And Cardinal Farrell had an incredible vision. And really what he wanted us to focus on more than anything else was being a system which was more responsive to the needs of Catholics and a system which was ultimately more responsive to the needs of our community. We did that through a number of different ways, which we've gone into in other areas. But the key aspect was really equipping our leaders with the ability to solve problems and to be ready for any issue that came up. We certainly did not expect that to be COVID, and then COVID hit. And it was really because of that approach that the Halo Initiative began to see its first offshoots off the ground. You have to go back, though, and kind of take a look at what was happening within our Catholic school system, understand just the key aspects for Halo. Because in many dioceses at the time, as we were kind of putting these things together, the main approach was, well, we just need more money. We need more money to basically throw at this problem. But we had seen places like Chicago with the Big Shoulders Fund and places like Seattle with the Fulcrum Foundation that had tons of money and yet still weren't seeing the types of educational gains that they were looking at. We looked at the Northeast, and what we saw was systems which had become almost entirely dependent on these outside funding sources. And instead of using them as really an incubator for success, it was a crutch that ultimately allowed them to kind of stay in one position and not have to improve. And so we wanted to have something different. We didn't want to have a diocesan entity which was just pumping money into the schools. We wanted to have something that could come alongside us, that could help test our thoughts and our hypotheses, that could ultimately fund certain innovations within the schools that might be scary to a diocese. Because frankly, some of the things that we want to attempt and some of the things that we need to do are different from where anyone else is doing them. And if there's one thing that the Catholic Church is not great at, it's very fast innovation. As Bishop Burns reminds me all the time, the church has been around for 2,000 years and we're just getting started. And so for many respects, we're having the same kind of growth pains in various other places. So COVID hits. And all of a sudden, our schools had to pivot on a dime. They had to focus first on online learning, then a return to in-person learning. And every day for really the last 18 months, our leaders have been solely focused on those aspects of how do we keep kids safe? How do we ultimately make sure that schools can continue to function and stay open? That singular focus is one of the things that we began at the very beginning of COVID to worry about in a huge way, because I was very concerned that with this new pivot, we would become schools which were really good at COVID and not good at anything else. And eventually, as we all know, COVID is going away in one form or another. There will be a form of normal which is coming back. And if we have just become organizations which are really good at fighting something which is no longer around, we're going to have a major problem. Well, that's really where the HALO initiative stepped in. They were able to kind of help maintain, as we were focused on the day-to-day aspects, the more strategic focus to where our system should be. Not just from a financial standpoint, although they provided financial aid to our schools, helped coordinate various aspects that came into play, but really to be that guiding strategic voice so that as our school leaders really focused on the day-to-day operations, HALO could step in and say there's other aspects that we could look at. The best thing that they did, and the thing that we're going to hand over to Jane to talk about here today, is really the HALO 139 program. All over the country last year, all you heard about were Catholic schools closing, anywhere between 193 to 250. We had 2 right over in Fort Worth that we saw have to close. All of those things were affecting all of these areas, except really right here in Dallas. And a big part of that was the HALO initiative, both helping us transition as quickly as we could to make sure that we weren't dropping off service for parents. But then secondly, on the way back, understanding that this is a great realignment for many families. They had, if they were in a public school system, a year that they probably didn't like a whole lot. If they were in sometimes other charter schools or even other private schools, they saw disruptions to the learning activities. They didn't have that within Catholic schools. HALO 139 basically put together a customer acquisition program unlike anything that we had seen before. 139 new students, all basically below the age of first grade, targeted at specific campuses in a way that we had never seen. And it's something which is allowing us to begin to change the tide of this. And it's also one of the reasons that we're going to be one of the few dioceses in the country that saw 500 student plus growth in and among our schools, 3 to 5% growth rate, while other schools are still having to close, while other dioceses are still having to contract. We're able to build and expand, and it's a lot because of the HALO initiative. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jane so that she can begin to tell you a little bit about what that is and what the secret sauce is.
Thanks, Dr. Vereecke. We are thrilled to have you as our guest presenter today, and we just wish you and the whole school system a great success this school year. Jane is the executive director of the HALO Institute. Obviously, you've heard she works hand in glove with Dr. Vereecke. It's an independent public charity. It was founded in May of 2020. And it leverages the advantages that Catholic education can bring to Dallas and the other areas. So their vision, as you're going to hear, is that any child can receive a Catholic education. So Jane, I know you've got a video that you'd like to tee up for us. So go ahead in that, and we look forward to your comments.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, let me go ahead and pull that up. Since HALO Initiative is new, please bear with me for about a 2.5-minute video to give you a good intro.
Catholic schools are good for Dallas. It has been proven over and over. Catholic education allows children to break through challenges and find more opportunity in their lives. It equips them to become engaged volunteers, donors, and leaders who improve their community. Yet over the years, fewer families have become aware of or understand the value of Catholic education, or they just don't think it's possible for them. And many schools across the country have just faded away. In Dallas, while our schools do have challenges, we have many advantages. Strong Catholic leaders open to innovation, a strong Christian and a growing Catholic population, generous community support from foundations, the Bishop's Invitational, tuition assistance organizations, private donors, corporations, and one of the leading diocesan endowments in the country. Even with those advantages, it is difficult to find resources to leverage the opportunities. Our Catholic school leaders and educators are focused on providing an environment that fosters learning and spiritual growth, and to manage an incredible and continual whirlwind of urgent activity. Often, our advantages and offers for support blow by because we cannot connect or coordinate what is needed in a timely manner. The HALO initiative slows the wind by coordinating and maximizing that support as we build a community that can make it possible for any child to receive a Catholic education. We are creating a hub where needs and resources can be matched and where we can make a collective impact. We give school leaders an environment to focus more on learning and culture. We improve processes and system information. We provide balance and coordination across the entire system of schools. We find innovative ways to educate more students. The HALO initiative is a rare organization in the country. We are an independent charity that works closely with the Catholic Schools Office and school leaders to make sure we are all focused on the best, most needed solutions. With the blessing and support of the diocese and our bishop, HALO is helping more students to access Catholic education and helping the schools in the community to work together better. Because Catholic schools are good for Dallas.
All right, so again, good morning. I'm Jane Koenecke with the HALO Initiative. And as you heard, we're the newbies. Just really got official as a 501c3 in May of 2020. And, you know, so much of what Geralyn already shared, we've experienced in many ways. So great wisdom, Geralyn. Here we were jumping in and saw so many good things we could do. And very quickly, we found ourselves feeling like we were scatter shooting across too many things. And so frankly, we were a startup, but we weren't acting like a startup. We just got quickly excited and enthusiastic about the different ways we could bring the community closer together with Dr. Vereecke staff and with the leaders of the individual schools. And we decided, you know what, we better regroup. We did so in the spring, and we really got focused on one thing, and that is to allow more kids to access a Catholic education. And so along the way, a lot of the ways that we approach it is with innovation and excellence. But our main thing is to help more kids get this Catholic education. Many of the young kids that have joined this fall, their parents weren't even thinking about Catholic education, but we figured out ways to really go and invite them in and help them to see what an awesome opportunity it is. It is proven what lifelong advantages Catholic education can bring. And so we're just excited. We're starting to get more kids to be able to enjoy that. As we refocused, we have a very small board and a very small team. It's me, and I have 2 coworkers. And we are purposely going to stay small, because one of the things that helps us to stay on point with what we're doing is we realized early on, unlike what I've done the rest of my career, where I was often building programs and being part of a big machine, a big corporation, instead, we exist totally to test and learn. And then once we help the schools to, you know, whatever we learn and whatever is worth going forward with, we help the school leaders to absorb that into their system, and we move on to test the next thing. So as you can tell, we're an unusual kind of organization in that we're just constantly moving on to the next thing. And that has been a big switch for me, and I have grown to absolutely love it. It allows me to connect with the community in ways that I never got to before. So anyway, let me go ahead and show you, as we were refocusing in the spring is when we have come up with a new vision and mission. And so let me just share that real quickly. You heard Bill refer to this, but our mission to work alongside the Catholic Schools Office in the Dallas community to strengthen, grow the impact of, and provide broad-based access to our K-8 Catholic schools. I'll tell you specifically K-8, and you know, Matt would echo this, but they need our assistance the most. Our high schools that are in the diocese are just, they're better staffed than our primary schools. And so this is where Halo is focusing a lot of the energy. And then, as you heard Bill allude to, our vision is this community that makes it possible for any child to receive a Catholic education. Boy, we would sure like to make more of that happen. So as I mentioned, to stay on our mission and vision, we have this focus on not only innovative testing things, but also what the CSO has determined our priorities. As I mentioned early on, and all of us experienced, there are so many good ideas, and you have to say no to a lot of them if you're going to get some things done and really move the needle on the top priorities. So we work hard to stay to that. And so that's the really fun thing for me, is being so focused on Catholic education and being able to work hand in glove with Dr. Vereecke's team. It really allows us to keep some good momentum going on very specific things. We also got a lot of clarity around, we don't want to be working on things that they can do themselves. Our Catholic social teaching of subsidiarity means a great deal to all of us. We want everyone to feel the room in their role to do everything that they can possibly do at their level. We don't want to get in anybody's way, especially the school leaders. And so the kinds of things that we're doing are, we're bringing something fresh and new that they don't have right now, or they aren't able to connect up in the way they would like to. So that's a clarity that we have found along the way. And then alignment, you know, as you can see, similar to the Catholic Foundation, we work with a lot of folks across the community. The way we do it, we're doing so to create a collective impact. You know, we all know we can do this better when we work together. And so we're very excited to have the ability, that's why our team is here. We're kind of like glue for all these good things and like-minded organizations trying to support Catholic education. So I know the Halo Initiative is something new for many of you, and I know we're going to go into some more questions later, but I just wanted to end on an invitation for any of you to reach out to me, and let's have coffee or talk further if you would like to learn more about any specifics on the Halo Initiative. And with that, I'll hand it back to Bill.
Thank you, Jane, so much. And you wear the halo very well above your head. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. Our next speaker is Michael Pazzaglini. Michael is the CEO of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul of North Texas. Before he joined back in August of 2014, he retired in July after 35 great years at IBM. Soon, he'll be retiring from St. Vincent de Paul of North Texas, leaving very big shoes to fill. And since joining as CEO, Michael's led the growth of the North Texas Society. It now serves over 65,000 people, and it delivers $10.5 million, might be even a little bit more now, in goods, services, and assistance across the 9 counties that make up the Diocese of Dallas. Michael is intimately involved in so many different church faith-based ministries, and again, big shoes to fill as his successor is to be named. So Michael, we'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel today. I noticed that I don't have the letter K in my last name, so I appreciate being invited. I do have 2 Z's, so carrying the Grammy theme, I'm representing ZZ Top. So I won't be singing. I know that disappoints many of you, but I appreciate being here. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul is an organization that's really focused on the spiritual growth of its members. Many people don't realize, I'm going to put up a little graphic here, hopefully, don't realize that. They always consider us a social service organization primarily, and that's got some truth to it, and except for the fact that we do this as a way for our members to encounter the face of Christ in those we serve. So the real focus is on that holiness, on that growth spiritually. And we do that through a variety of services. And you can see the spectrum of ways that we engage the people who are in need. This particular graphic I put together is a way to show the spectrum of need that's being served in terms of emergency assistance, what we're primarily known for, and what we've been in the Diocese of Dallas here now since the 1950s, growing or evolving into a more of a systemic change set of programs and services, trying to go after the root cause that exists for the particular needs that we're seeing. So many times, most of you know about our thrift stores, for example, that provide food or clothing and furnishings, our food pantries that exist in the various parishes. We provide rental assistance to keep people in their homes. We also provide utility assistance. You're also aware that during the disasters, when we had the tornadoes back in 2015, 2016, we were providing our House in a Box program. So these are all different ways that we're addressing that sort of immediate corporal need to alleviate that suffering. But then when we start going after the root cause of why they're in that particular situation, many times we'll find it's a combination of a situation. You know, study time, for example, our study time program is an after school program that addresses the educational need, helps the students with their homework, helps improve their reading and math skills. And now we're further accentuating that program by providing scholarships to the private schools in the area, whether it be Bishop Lynch or JP2 or the other schools that are out there, Ursuline Academy. Those scholarships are that carrot to the students to stay in the program through the 8th grade and then be eligible for that scholarship program. And I'm happy to say our very first student that went through this sort of process, our pilot student, if you will, she was able to go to Ursuline Academy with a scholarship, and then she got into the University of Texas in the business program and graduated from that program as well. And her family now is changed forever and for the better, and hopefully never having to come back to that situation where they're in need. As you add to that, we added to our mini loan program, which was really trying to address the terrible blight on our society of predatory lending, auto title and payday loans. These loans average 300 to 500%. And they're really structured in such a way as to never allow the person out of the loan. Essentially, the way it works is you would get a loan, say for $1,000, you'd have to pay back that $1,000 in 2 weeks' time. And most of the people that borrow that money don't have the ability to pay it back in 2 weeks' time. So for a small fee, $50, $100, they can roll that over for another 2 weeks. And they just keep this going. Meanwhile, the principal and interest keeps accruing. So that $1,000 loan initially after 5 months is now $5,000, $4,000 that has to be paid back. Our mini loan program alleviates that. It basically gives them a 3% loan to pay off that loan immediately and then enter into our loan program over 12 months that gets them back on their financial feet. So many of the people that we get calls from that say, I can't pay my rent, we find out that they actually have a payday loan lingering in the background that's causing this particular situation. This gets them out of that predicament. Community gardens, another way to address food deserts, and we're got a couple of small programs going on in the Lancaster area at our St. Vincent Center. We've also started up Neighborhoods of Hope, which is an employment program, again, in the South Dallas County, central to Lancaster, to help move the needle on lowering the poverty rate in those areas by finding jobs or improving the jobs that particular people have. And then lastly, our community pharmacy is the one that's most notable. We've gotten a lot of recent press coverage because of it. It allows us to provide free medications to people who are below 300% of the federal poverty level. And so those free medications are given to people who are uninsured and below that income level. And it's a variety of medications, whether it be for cholesterol management or for diabetes or for blood pressure. Mental health is another aspect that we provide. And this pharmacy program is going gangbusters. I mean, it really is doing well. We just passed our 50,000 prescription milestone a month ago. This year, we're on track for doing 30,000. Our year ends at the end of this month. And we have a plan in place to grow this program over the next 4 years so that we can deliver a cumulative total of 650,000 scripts, 650,000 scripts. And that has a value of in excess of $130 million of benefit to people in need. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that Hank Herman's on the call, and Hank is really the spark plug that's behind this whole program. He's the one that's been dogging this effort to get this community pharmacy established. And we were able to pull everything together and get it kicked off in 2018. So thank you, Hank, for helping get this started. We are in the midst of, as I mentioned, growing the pharmacy program, and we're in the midst of a $5 million campaign to help fund that growth. And this pharmacy will end up serving the entire state. We have a business model that allows us to distribute the medications from one location, the Dallas location, across the state and serve the need for all of the people in need throughout Texas. Just so you know, 1 out of 6 Texans would qualify for our program. That's 5 million Texans. That's a huge number, and hopefully they all show up on our door tomorrow because we wouldn't be able to handle it, but we're going to do our best to serve that need. I also want to mention this organization happens because of the volunteers, the people who are members of the society, the 750 men and women that are really performing saintly duties, if you will, in their journey towards holiness. allow us to accomplish these great works. Our model is very efficient with those volunteers, as you can imagine. 92 cents of every dollar goes right back out in terms of assistance, in terms of addressing the need. With the systemic change programs, we also have a multiplier effect. If you look at our mini loan program, well, if you look at our emergency assistance programs, those are usually dollar for dollar. You pay an electric bill, you pay a rent payment, a dollar comes in and a dollar goes out. When you start looking at systemic change, the mini loan program is a 3-to-1 multiplier. So we're able to take that $1 and provide $3 in benefit of avoiding fees, avoiding cars being repossessed. When you look at the community pharmacy, that number jumps to $10 for every dollar. So not only are we efficient in terms of operation, we're also delivering value to our donor community of providing greater benefit, leveraging that dollar invested. And as Bill mentioned, last year we were able to provide a total value of $10.5 million in assistance, goods, and services to our community. I'd be remiss also not to mention that we work hand in glove with Catholic Charities. When I joined in 2014, it wasn't a great relationship between the two organizations. They sort of worked independently as pillars. And I got to say, between Dave Woodyard, myself, Matt Kramer's part of that trio as well as the three of us, and along with Bill Keffler, the four musketeers, if you will, we were able to pull together that set of services in a way that complemented each of our programs. We obviously didn't have enough money to do everything for everyone and duplicate services. So we were able to sort of dovetail our efforts to maximize our ability to serve those in need. So that's been very helpful for us as we move forward through time. I also want to acknowledge that it's also quite providential that we're meeting today, because tomorrow is the feast day of our founder, Frederick Ozanam. And so we're very happy to be a part of this group and this panel. I'd also like to just touch on the COVID sort of impact. Again, Providence plays a big role. We were in the midst in the late 2019 of putting a telecommuting plan in place for our staff. We were running out of office space, basically. Our staff are 16, we have 16 members, about 6 of those are in the pharmacy, the others are part of the office staff, and we were running out of office space. So we said, let's build a telecommute plan where people can come and go into the office on a scheduled basis to meet with their various teams. And that plan was ready to go in place in 2020, but we weren't quite sure of when we were going to start it. And COVID sort of forced the issue and said, okay, you're going to start it, March 13th, here we go. And we were off and running, but we were ready for it. And we were in a good position to implement it without really any impact to our services that we were delivering. Our volunteers switched gears immediately. We didn't stop serving those in need. We had said change from a home visit model to a telephone visit model. Would go on their way. And our pharmacy kept being every single day, providing those medications using COVID protocols. We were only closed one day last year out of the whole year because of a COVID protocol that we needed to follow. So we were able to navigate that, and we've done a fairly good job of doing that. Our volunteers are starting back up the home visit process in person. It varies from parish to parish, but as we go through the year, there's more confidence and more anxiousness to get back out and to encounter the face of Christ in those home visits. So that's the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in a nutshell.
Thank you, Michael, so much for all the work you do, and Hank, for you, and the shout out that you well deserve there for all your work with the pharmacies. Tremendous work, and we've enjoyed our partnership with you. We have plenty of time for questions. And I just want you all to be, again, thinking of questions that you might have. You can verbally offer those up. You can use the chat feature in your function. I did want to just kind of bring the comments of our speakers together. And one of the things that jumped out to me when we're talking about mission scope and mission creep is it sometimes might be a little bit easier to add on things that you're going to do, but it can be even more difficult to say, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. So for all of our speakers, just a brief reference to that topic, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A. So how do you decide what not to do? Because it can probably be very enticing, and we'll just open that up to all of our speakers.
I think for us, Bill, it's starting at the foundation again, going with our mission. And for instance, we're looking at that right now. What do we need to do in terms of the climate of abortion changing? Well, we have to mission up in our Project Gabriel. We have to be very well connected with our partnering organizations to be able to help moms in need as they choose life. But again, it's going back to our mission and to restore respect, legal protection, and abortion, but to care for both the mother and the child. So for us, it's not thinking what's at the top, it's thinking really foundationally what's at the bottom, what's at our basics.
I would say for the HALO initiative, as I had mentioned, we had started off doing more and quickly realized, and the way that we realized we were doing too much and needed to say no to some things is, I'll say it this way, Matt Vereecke and I have a partnership, and we recognize there's got to be this push and pull. And so we have a real advantage in that. And when I'll just say our inside voices don't match our outside voices, we recognize, wait a minute, something's awry. And so I'll, it may be echoing myself, but we had some fantastic ideas, fantastic connections in the community, and we're, bringing these to Matt. But if they didn't match up with the priorities that he had for his school leaders right now, it didn't make sense for us to bring those. They ended up just being a distraction from what he really needed to get done. And so it was a mutual responsibility and recognition. Matt is very open. He wants us to challenge his thinking. And so it's really a great relationship that way, where there is plenty of room for both of us to speak up, and our teams to speak up, and our board to speak up and recognize, okay, risk reward conversations going on here. But with that, it comes back down to, how do we best serve the schools right now? And I think one of the main drivers for that is we're recognizing more and more what Michael had mentioned earlier. This is a way that changes not only a student's life, but their whole family's life for decades ahead. And so this is a huge part of evangelizing for Catholic Church right now. It used to be that the churches fed the schools, and now more and more often the schools are starting to feed our churches. And so just with that recognition, we work very hard to have that partnership and that push and pull where we can have a very open discussion about those types of things.
We, well, with our mission of growing our members in holiness, you can imagine we've got an infinite number of desires to serve, right? And we have to figure out what we can afford to do, what we have the resources to do, and are there other groups already doing that work? And can we collaborate with them instead of reinventing the wheel? A good example of that, I think, is the homeless situation. We looked at what Catholic Charities is doing with their housing initiative of the homeless. And we said, okay, how do we dovetail into that? And one of the ways we can do that is provide free medications to those homeless people that are in residence at those locations. It's another way of sort of figuring out, yeah, let's go after that particular service, but do it in a way that we don't own it necessarily. In the case of the mini loan program, we found that that was not being served. We were aware of other programs that were out there, but they were doing it in a slightly different way, in a much more, I'll say, costly way. So we were able to put that into our toolkit and say that's the one that we should move forward with in our particular support of our mission. We're looking for ways to grow our set of services that are in line with that mission, but we're doing it in a slow way. We don't have an endless supply of money, as many of us don't. So that sort of puts the brakes on those good ideas and says, okay, let's figure out how we can afford this and make it happen, but in a way that's affordable to us.
Thank you, Michael. Our first question comes to us through the chat feature. So again, feel free to use the Zoom chat feature, or after the speakers address this question, just pose it verbally. Luis would like to know from our speakers, can you speak to the challenges of coordinating efforts and communications with all of the volunteers who support your organizations?
I can start this off. We have a challenge, if you will, in terms of connecting with the 700 members and making sure we're all on the same page. COVID really put a little bit of a twist on that, but it actually helped us because it forced the issue of technology usage. We have an older population that serve as volunteers, and there's a reluctance to go after new technology or to learn it, but COVID forced that hand. And so we took advantage of that by having more Zoom meetings. I know we all hate them, we're on one right now, but we were able to connect with our members and stay in touch with them. And in fact, the conference meetings, the regular meetings actually increased in membership because they could attend virtually. Secondly, we also implemented what we refer to as our 1-minute update. And that 1-minute update is a weekly communication that comes from me, built by my staff, but comes from me, and it's no more than 4 or 5 bullets of two sentences each with some links. And it's nothing more than saying, here's what's happening in the past week that you should be aware of. And that's got overwhelming sort of positive feedback in terms of a vehicle that's crisp, clean, effective. And it seems to be putting everybody on this exact same page, no matter where they are, all the way down to the member in the conference. Everybody gets that on a weekly basis, and that seems to be an effective way of connecting.
Since the HALO initiative is so new, we don't have a lot of volunteers yet. I'm fortunate in that I have a lot of years in branding communications experience. And so for me, I very naturally think about our 6 primary stakeholders. And so whether it's, one-on-ones with board members or team members, on out to how we speak to the community at large, even outside the Catholic ecosystem, I have a lot of tools and ways that I create some connectivity with those. So I have lots of ideas and lots of different ways that I do that, and excited to develop that as we get more volunteers. Sorry, I don't have more to offer now.
I'll jump in. We do many of the things that Michael described, and we've been volunteer driven since the beginning. So we were started by volunteers, which is a nice continuity. Connection is key. We just put in place a volunteer coordinator in an official role, because communication, as we learned through COVID, is key, particularly when people can't be face to face. And we work with our volunteers to assess what they want to help with. We have volunteers who want to work with a specific ministry, a specific objective in the pro-life community. So we'll have volunteers. We had a need last week, and there's somebody that could just generously come in and answer our phone, particularly on the week that the law went into effect, the heartbeat law. Very important that our phones were being answered. And just a number of volunteers came through for us on that. But then also we have volunteers that we call executive volunteers, people who have been in the workplace in any number of roles and who want to commit a good number of time in an executive role in volunteering. So whether it's working with us in parish engagement or whether it's working with us in finance, we have different levels of volunteer where people can come in without pay and to help to help the mission that they have in their heart for pro-life. But communication, relationship building, I think is key. And I think we all agree on that.
Yep.
For sure.
Thank you all. Let me just stop here, invite anybody for questions that you'd like to pose to any of our speakers, please.
While we're waiting for the questions, let me build off of Geralyn's comment. The home visit process that we use is really all centered around building those relationships. You triggered it when you said relationship. And you shouldn't hear any of our members refer to the people we serve as clients. And we do that deliberately to get away from the transactional notion that implies. There are friends, there are neighbors, they're the men and women we serve and we become friends with. And so the home visit process allows us to start that friendship and start that process. So it's sort of the key underpinnings for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. There's no questions. I'm going to start singing. And that's dangerous.
Okay, that's it, Michael. Then I'm going to have to ask a question. I was really shocked. I don't want to hear you sing. So I was really shocked when you said 1 of 6 Texans are 300% are below the poverty level. So can you put that in perspective for us, what that means dollars and cents wise? So what is the,
family of 4 or family of 3 at 300%, $65,000 a year, and they're uninsured. And those numbers come from the Urban Institute and the Kaiser Foundation. And it's from 2019, I think, as the data points. But 1 in 6 is 5 million Texans. That's a huge number.
And your $5 million campaign for the pharmacy for statewide, is that something where you're getting support from a lot of other foundations across the state?
Well, we're building that. We're in the midst of that process right now. We're growing initially in North Texas. We're in Fort Worth now, and we're trying to expand that. The Diocese of Tyler has asked us to look at helping them out. But yes, we are approaching foundations on a broader scale as well. But we would welcome foundations in North Texas if there's an interest or, a donor community out there that wants to help. We'd welcome that as well.
Inviting any questions through the chat feature or just verbally, just go off mute and pose your question. We'd be glad to address. In the interim, I wanted to note that all 3 of our featured speakers have worked in both for-profit and nonprofit. We've had some past panels where there's been some great debate and discussion about, is there a difference of mission creation and formation and management in a profit environment versus a nonprofit environment? And many of our attendees represent both sides or have represented both sides. If you all could talk just a little bit, please, about the significance of your time in a profit realm and how that's helping you in the nonprofit realm. And we'll just start with any of you.
I'll go ahead and jump in because I've had a really great advantage in my lifetime where I've had an interesting combo. And so I have worked with a Fortune 5 company, McKesson, and I have had many years with Interstate Batteries, and they are known for their Christian environment. And I'll tell you, you know, when I first came to, I guess I had been in Texas for a while, but I'm originally from Wisconsin, where almost everybody was Catholic, where I grew up. And so it was interesting just being closer to the Bible Belt and all of that. And so it was an unusual feeling when I arrived at a company where in the first couple of days, I saw people were coming in and out of this guy's office crying or, you know, emotional or whatever. And I thought, he must have been the HR hatchet man or something, but I came to find out, no, we have a corporate chaplain at this company. And at first I felt like I stuck my foot in a bear trap. I thought, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? But I stayed for a lot of years because they truly treated their corporation like a ministry. And so the chaplain was on staff, first of all, to serve the team members. We had both distributors and franchisees and their extended families all across North America. And they offered up resources for whatever, you know, challenges, ongoing spiritual growth for people. And what made me understand that this was for real and something to really embrace was that it was completely optional. It was the chairman, you know, understanding that people are having a harder and harder time figuring out how to squeeze in spirituality into busy lives. And then the second thing that the chaplains group did was they did a ton of community service, and they support a lot of real small organizations that are just getting started. But then they also do, you know, like if you've ever heard of the Celebrate Freedom concert that was at South Fork for so many years, the I Am Second campaign, they did a lot of worldwide work too. And so for me, I had the joy of working in a for-profit business that also treated their community as a ministry and a way to drive faith further into the culture and the world. And so I have that interesting background. And so now it has been an absolute joy. You know, I'm such a big believer in Catholic education. It's been just a stronghold in me and my family's life and how it has served us. And so it's been a joy. I've been able to serve on the Diocesan Education Endowment Trust group for a long time, and now doing this work specifically with the Catholic schools. The freedom that I feel coming in every day and really expressing my faith in a more deep fashion. And I find myself just kind of more naturally evangelizing with especially non-Catholics. And so I really appreciate being able to do this kind of work has really opened up more in me as to how I can impact the world that way.
It's funny you asked that question, Bill, because I woke up early this morning and I started thinking about today's session, and you know, your brain starts racing at 4 o'clock in the morning. But one of the things that did come to my mind was being in the technology field at IBM, we learned about the industry S-curve of technology, where you're embryonic in your technology, then it takes off, then it plateaus, and it's an end of life cycle technology. And then the next technology starts its S-curve. And I started thinking about our programs that we provide, and they go through that as well, where you're just getting it off the ground and then they're going up and up and up. but then the environment changes. Something, the need morphs into something different. And now that program, which was so effective, isn't quite as effective, and we need to reinvent it and tweak it to take it to a new level of effectiveness. So I think that S-curve notion applies for both our social programs, our services, as well as it does in technology. And then building off of Jane's comment, I was a member of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in Austin for 20 some years before I took this job. And it was a real blessing for me to be able to work in an environment that appreciated and helped you grow spiritually as your work. Getting paid to do that was a wonderful, benefit that you couldn't. In IBM, it was so secular, and don't ever go outside the religious box. Stay in your box. But being able to be in this new environment is just a real blessing.
I'll add on briefly here. Thank you to my fellow panelists for your interesting comments. Being in the business world provided me a great background with strategic focus and business processes, project management, those necessities when coming to a ministry. Michael, you said that the St. Vincent de Paul volunteers, they're on a path to holiness, and I believe that we all are, moving from the for-profit world, if you will, into whether it was my Friends of Los Niños or my joy business or this business here, this organization. It's not a job, and that's how, when I referred back to our 409 years of pro-life experience with our 35 team members, it's not a job. It is living the ministry and living the belief. And I'm just going to jump in because I see something in the panel about how do you engage the non-Catholic community. Well, for us, pro-life is the respect for life is so foundational in our organization, and it is across religions. Catholics do not own pro-life, for instance. And so, for instance, on September 30th, we're meeting with pastors in South Dallas. Pastors of non-Catholic Christian churches, because we have to go to that very basic again when we talked about restoring respect for life and supporting the dignity of human life. So I wanted to get those two answers in there, but it is very important. We talk about people of goodwill, and everyone is a person of goodwill when we're talking about ministry. And we have a responsibility to the community, whether we're in a secular role or in these ministries and in these nonprofits that we are. We have a responsibility to the world, to the communities in which we live. And I have been blessed in the past by working with organizations that had a lot of community emphasis. And that was my foundation as well as a student going through Catholic schools from 1st through 12th grade, that foundation of service. And so I feel blessed again to be here with you panelists and to be able to be with you all and all the community members here talking about the importance of community and serving others.
I can take on to the non-Catholic community question. Halo exists. A big reason for it is just that. Lots of folks appreciate Catholic education, understand the advantages it gives kids for the rest of their lives, and they want to support it, but they don't necessarily, they either can't work with a faith-oriented group or they would rather not. And so the Halo initiative is very purposefully an independent charity. And so we get to work with, the Catholic ecosystem, as we like to call it, and beyond. I can tell you I've got a great relationship with Frost Bank already, and who knew they wanted so much to engage with the community in ways that is right up our alley with Catholic education. They're starting to look at providing some financial assistance in their communities in cooperation with our parents. And so there are lots and lots of organizations that we're able to go and work with that just wouldn't normally be able to connect with the schools in this way. Matt Vereecke, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think one of the other amazing things Halo has done is allowing us to kind of shift the demographic of the students we're attracting to the school as well. We oftentimes, I think people forget that Catholic schools serve the needs of the community. And depending on which area of Dallas you're in, that may mean that the majority of students at a Catholic school are actually not Catholic. And from that perspective, we are one of the biggest evangelization arms of the Catholic Church, because we meet families where they are and oftentimes are their first and only experience at the Catholic school. The Halo 139 program, about 30% of the new families that were brought in are non-Catholic. And that's pretty critical in some of the neighborhoods where we serve. St. Elizabeth, for example, is in a neighborhood where the parish, even a decade ago, was baptizing 112 kids a year, and now they're baptizing 6. The only way for a school like that to stay viable is to ultimately find other families who are very interested in the mission and the values of Catholic education. And you have to walk a fine line between ultimately bringing people in a very welcoming way and saying all are welcome, but at the same time making very clear to all of those people who come in what that means to engage within the Catholic faith and how that will impact their own attempts at really getting to know their faith. We tell every family who comes in, we want you to be stronger in whatever faith tradition that you're coming from if you leave us. And if you have no faith tradition, we want you to at least understand what that means. And for many of those families, they do wind up converting. There are many that also stay exactly where they are. But if they have an experience at the Catholic Church, which is ultimately positive, that's really what we're trying to get at and help kind of share those values and those visions.
Thank you.
Yeah, to build on the prior comments, we also have the ability to bring non-Catholic members into the society to serve with us. There's an attractiveness in the sense that you're doing service, right? You're helping others, and that is a very strong pull for many people to come in and to join with us. We also have the opposite problem of people thinking, well, you only help Catholics. And, no matter how many times you say we serve everyone, that's what we hear is, oh, you're only helping Catholics. But we do have members who are non-Catholic as well. Bill, I don't know if you wanted me to address the next question about the budgeting.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I just want to say, Lisa, thank you for your question and everybody speaking to that about interfacing with non-Catholics. So yeah, Michael, we have a question from Karen, who would like to know specifically from you about budgeting and the programs that you oversee, how you go about following up, monitoring continued success of growth for the individuals who are receiving assistance from St. Vincent de Paul. Yeah. And this will be our last question, so feel free to address this.
Absolutely. First of all, the society is broken up, if you will, in North Texas into sort of 3 buckets. And the first bucket is the conferences, those men and women in the parishes that serve that emergency assistance need. That represents about $3 million of donations that go right back out into the community to provide that need. The second is our systemic change programs, which are done again at the council level, the organization I represent. And that's another $3 million, let's say, roughly speaking. And it's broken up into those programs that we talked about earlier. And then the third piece is the thrift store, which is another component. It operates, in the range of about $2.4 million, a little over almost $2.5 million. And its proceeds, the money that's left over that's not consumed by the expenses, goes right back into those conferences for them to distribute out to the emergency need that's out in the community. So those are the 3 types of budgets that we deal with. And as far as monitoring the programs, we try to focus on the impact, right, to the community. Are we making a difference? Not just a lot of activity. With the emergency assistance, it's really centered around alleviating the corporal suffering. And many times we engage with families that their need is far greater than our ability to serve it. But we do the best we can to give them time to get back on their feet or to team up with other organizations that can help help them address that particular need together, whether we collaborate together and solve that particular problem. With the systemic change programs, we look at the impact of, like in the example mini loan program, avoided fees as one of our measures, and that these families are now out of that cycle of debt. And do they get back on their financial feet after that year? And now they don't need to go into another payday or auto title loan. And if I could, jumping back to that S-curve notion, one of the things we talked about with mini loan is we went from being a conversion program. We also added an emergency relief aspect where you don't need to get the payday loan. We'll give you that loan at that rate so we can avoid that process altogether. But that was another measure that allowed us to see that need and to address it. And, you know, with the pharmacy program, it's the number of individuals we serve, as well as the number of prescriptions that we can provide, the productivity of our staff to serve that. We're on a path for next year. We're going to do 30,000 this year. Next year, we're going to do 100,000 scripts. And so that's a huge jump, but we're ready to do that with the staff we have in place and in our services to distribute those medications to the clinics we support. Hopefully that answers the question or gives you at least a little bit better picture. You're on mute, Bill.
Yep. Thank you, Michael.
Yep.
On behalf of the Catholic Foundation, would just really like to thank all of our speakers. Like to thank Geralyn and Jane and Michael, and our bonus speaker, Dr. Matt Vereecke. In recognition of your time and support, the Catholic Foundation will be providing a financial, a financial donation to your specific organizations. Okay, so thank you so much. To all of you, thank you for joining. As mentioned earlier, we will make this seminar, this session available on our YouTube page, our website, and our socials. And so we'll look forward to you sharing that with others who may not have been able to join. So the collaboration today was great. The feedback was wonderful. Thank you so much for all the questions that you provided. We'll be meeting again, topic to be determined on December the 8th. So we look forward to that. So have a great day, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and spread joy. Thank you all.